Okay, welcome. This is Andy Lee Graham, and I've traveled nonstop I've lived abroad for 25 years and been a perpetual traveler for 25 years, and I don't have a home, and I live abroad. And I've been in 114 countries, and I may be the world's longest perpetual traveler. Okay, I probably traveled longer than anybody almost on the planet, at least in the English language. But it's a very hard thing to know for sure, right? Um, but I'm going to talk about July 4th, 1845. July 4th, 1845. My hero, which is most of my heroes are not alive, Benjamin Franklin, and I don't know. But July 4th, 1845, on Henry David Thoreau went to Walden Pond. It's near Boston, and lived there for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. And he wrote the book called Walden. And he's known as one of the classic American writers. I mean, he's with a lot of, Walt Whitman and Ralph Waldo Emerson were people that he actually was with in a lot of ways. But I read this book when I was about 15 years old. And I don't have a clue why I read this. I was quite addicted to reading Star Trek and science fiction books at this age. And I don't know why a long-haired basketball player, football player, rabble-rouser would read Walden, because it's kind of considered a university intellectual type book. But I did. So I have no clue. But at that juncture in my life, I read anything that got near me that was of least bit interest. And I still do the same thing. If I start a book and I don't like it, I just stop reading it. Okay, I don't try to ever force myself to read a book. But I love this book. And it's kind of been interesting because my subconscious understanding of that book has been running my life for the last 45 years. And I think it's one of the reasons I went traveling. But I believe we all have a calling, okay? And there's things that call us, okay? The things that beckon to us and say, come, okay? And the chapter Economy beckoned me and set up the framework, social construct, the mental paradigm where I think, okay? And it's ran my life all my life. Um, Henry David Thoreau was able to write a quotable sentence that became a mantra. He was one of the most quoted people I know. He's up there with Mark Twain. And a really great writer will create great phrases that sort of sing to you. And I'm going to, I'll soon tell you a few of these phrases, okay? Some of these quotes. But I get on brainy quotes a lot, and use quotes from there. I find quotes because I love to listen to quotes. But I have a whole playlist of different quotes from famous people, because if you understand their quotable phrases, you really kind of understand a lot of their essence without having to go crazy reading something in Old English or something, right? But a mantra is something that people tell everybody, right? It's like a mantra is something you do in meditation, but they use Henry David Thoreau. People carry around this book, and I've given it away 2 or 3 times as a wedding gift. But like the book, the movie, in a way, Henry David Thoreau gave me the call of the wild. Okay, he gave me the wanderlust, the wonder, the desire to live a special life, and I have. Jack London wrote the Call of the Wild. We all have a calling. We all have a raison d'etre. A raison d'etre is the meaning of life. And I want everybody to have an examined life, as Socrates said, or whatever, an introspective life where they ask themselves, why live? But there's a little voice in all of us. And that little voice says, we're all a spark of genius, and we all have good and bad in us. It's not, I feel part of Henry David Thoreau is a transcendentalist, where they've sort of believed that we had an intuitive ability to Ralph Waldo Emerson and different people, but they had an intuitive ability to know what the the right thing to do was, the good and bad. But life is an experiment, and I actually wrote a book, and I was laughing because I didn't realize this correlation until I was writing out these notes this morning. I wrote a book called The Hobo Way: Life is an Experiment, Walden, and I knew I tied it in. And I put an epigraph, one of those little quotes, the little snippets at the beginning of each chapter, and I pulled them, a lot of them from Henry David Thoreau. Not every chapter had a thing, but it was just sort of a book that was I started writing. Somebody asked me if I was a minimalist, and I ended up writing a book pretty much saying I'm not really a minimalist. But if you see the cover of my book, I'm going to on that link that I gave you, there's a cover of my book. It's called The Hobo Way: Life is an Experiment, Walden. The name was supposed to be Life is an Experiment, The Hobo Way, but my proofreader reversed it. Okay, but Henry David Thoreau went to the woods on July 4th, 1845, and stayed there 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. It's not a coincidence, I don't think, that he did this specific time period, okay? Yeah, but there's a angel and devil in everybody, and if you look at the cover of my book, it's got a little angel on one shoulder and a little devil on the other shoulder, because when you're in the experiment of life, you don't really know what to do, and so you got to listen to the angel. Okay, even if there is no God, you still know the right from wrong, and you can listen to the angel. But what's interesting, Wade Shepard of Vagabond Journey did the proofreading for my book. He asked to do it. He wanted to do it, but for the one book. And he recommended the book, Life is an Experiment, because I said this in the book. And when you're writing a book, so what I'm doing right now is I'm writing a book about it's called Andy Lives in an Alternate Reality, a tribe of one for 25 years in 114 countries. And it'll probably change by the time I publish it. But Henry David Thoreau did an experiment, and my life for the last 25 years has been an experiment. And in an experiment, you don't know how things are going to turn out. I mean, when you enter another country, you're basically in a learning process and learning from information that comes in. But the chapter, the economy, is an experiment, in my opinion. Now, there are many Harvard professors and all sorts of different people that write about this book. It's a very, very, what would you say? It's a book that everybody is assigned in, literary 101 or L101, I guess I had at Indiana University. This is a type of book that is assigned as part of a university class or a high school class. I got a feeling mine might have been assigned for my government class at Prairie Heights High School in northern Indiana. But why was he doing it on July 4th, 1845? It's a Declaration of Independence. That's what happened on July 4th. We declared our independence from an unfair, unjust tyranny world. And if you go through this chapter, he basically insults society to no end, okay? It's kind of funny. But as he left the lake, he called it a sojourn. A sojourn is a temporary time where you spend and feel and live in a place. And Henry says why he left. It was a sojourn. We have many lives, okay? And he had many lives to live. And he did an experiment. He proved his experiment. But what was his experiment? That is the question that I don't really see university professors and literary scholars and people answering this question. And to me, it's an equation. But I'll tell you, the word sojourn refers to a temporary stay or a period of residence in a particular place. So when he left, on the next chapter, like why he went to the woods, it says, my sojourn, blah, blah, blah. he uses that word after leaving. Okay, but what's interesting, and this is absolutely hilarious to me. Okay, they call him. Let's see if I can read the quote here. July 4th. This is a quote from the birth of American environmental movement. They're blaming it on Henry David Thoreau. And this is, there's a link in here. Oh, where is it at? I got a link in here, and it's from National Geographic. So they say that Henry David Thoreau started, National Geographic says, they had an article. Let me say that. They have many different writers, and writers come up with titles that are supposed to be catchy, right? So it's not like everybody's saying this, but he's often considered an extreme environmentalist, and 95% of the people only care about the environmentalist, basically telling the society to go screw themselves, because that's what he kind of did. He says, "I'm screw society. I'm going to go to the woods and live, and I don't need you." So that's sort of the call of the wild. But what's interesting to me is most people skip the first chapter. I was watching a professor give a lecture on it and said, well, really the first chapter, which is the biggest chapter in the book and the prominent one, and this guy's really kind of a genius writer. He put it there for a reason. He didn't just accidentally put it there. He designed this book to be catchy. And he in the economy, he basically says the whole economy of how he lives. He uses the word not in a business term, but to me, most of the readers, 90% of the readers, lost the plot. They didn't pay attention to the first chapter. Okay, they lost the plot. That's traveler slang for people that go crazy when they get too much freedom. He was angry. He was angry at society. He basically goes through it. On the bottom of this link that I will put in the description, there's like 58 times he basically says that society is a problem. I'm going to read off the first 5 or 6 quotes, but I'm not going to read you all 58. I only got half the chapter done. There's probably 100 different times where he basically says, or in very accurately says, that society is going the wrong way. But I believe that 90% of the readers didn't understand. They just love his prose. I mean, the reason why the guy is good is like reading a poem. He wanted to be a poem writer, but he didn't really do good. He couldn't really sell those. I think he gave a lot of lectures. But the truth was, he wrote in a poetic way, okay? And that's why I said like Mark Twain and Benjamin Franklin. A lot of people have quotes that are music, because if you want somebody to remember something, they got to kind of sing a song in their brain. But this is the thing from National Geographic. July 4th, 1845, the birth of an American environmental movement. And he's correct, but I'm not sure that was Henry David Thoreau's goal. I'm kind of laughing out loud. But he wrote the book kind of like a Bible. What is a Bible? Bible's parables. They have little stories. And a parable is a really great way to talk. I mean, if you want to tell a story, and you're really good at telling stories, tell a parable, because a parable helps everybody. Sometimes I tell something that's very complicated in a very simple way, and one person very simply understands it, but the more complex brain understands the allusion to other things. But one person reads one story, and another person reads another story. That's what a parable does. The story is interpreted by one person. So the bad person could read the bad view of it in the good person. So you have these parables in the Bible. But there's a parable about render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's. So they asked Jesus or something about money and something. He says, those things that are not of God, that are Caesar's, we will help Caesar. We give Caesar what Caesar wants, and we give God what God wants. But what he set up is the priority system that he was saying, yes, I pay attention to Caesar, but I also pay attention to my God. Well, the the person collecting taxes only wanted the money. He didn't care what you did with God, but basically he said, "I will have a higher priority of God than I will of Caesar." Um, he had a spiritual obligation to God first, so that's way a parable work. And so, how did Henry David Thoreau's economy chapter? That people read it as an environmentalist that needed that kind of view, and people needed the solitude that needed that kind of view. So he had multiple themes, and simplicity, solitude, and environmental, because he could talk forever about trees and water and the sunset and the sunrise and the birds. And but his first chapter was called economy. Okay, and people seem to miss that he was talking about the economy, his personal economy, how he used his money to survive. But he wrote for nature and his experiment. Then I got the link here in this link that I'll put in the description. Okay, how he lives in economy. What he said he would do, he would give 6 weeks of work. I'm paraphrasing this. He would give 6 weeks of work for only the necessities. So what he did is he worked only 6 weeks a year. He said it for 5 years, on only living by what is needed to work. See, the reason why people go broke is they buy the things they want, not the things they need. And this is why it's kind of interesting for me, because I've been living in a hotel room for almost 25 years, spending about less than $1,000 a month, and I traveled the whole planet. But how did I do that? It's because I only buy and do what is necessary. I do more than I need to do for experience, but I don't buy more than necessary. And I can't carry more than necessary because I live out of backpack. Okay. There's a picture of my cover of my book where I got the little angel on the thing. But this is chapter 1, economy. And I'm going to make this video many times until I get really good at explaining the chapter economy. Because every time you do it, you get a little, I'm the one that's learning the most. I'm the best student here because by talking, explaining it, it's an adventure into my subconscious, and basically by explaining it, I should stop using that word basically. By becoming more articulate about this explanation, I'm the student, and the student, when a student arrives, a teacher appears. So to me, the going live on YouTube is the teacher. Okay, Henry David Thoreau. I'm going to write a book called Maybe. Okay, it's not finished, so who knows the name? I've changed it already about 5 times. Andy's alternate reality, 25 years as a tribal one in 100 plus countries. And in this thing, I got a database of all the different chapters, and it's all, visible and accessible by anybody. I don't hide anything, but it's my subconscious. So my subconscious reading of Henry David Thoreau when I was age 15 made it so I wrote a book called Life is an Experiment the Hobo Way. Walden, had the word Walden on the end. And now I'm writing another book. So your subconscious, what your subconscious does is it leads you to where you need to go. Okay, you don't know why you're going there, but you go there. And in a way, I think Henry David Thoreau needed to escape society. So he went to Walden Pond and built a house. I don't think when he first started there, he knew what book he was writing. He didn't have all that figured out. The book evolved, okay, because his subconscious became more clear, right? For more than 5 years, okay, this is the quote about him working and that everybody seems to avoid. For more than 5 years, I maintained myself solely by the labor of my hands. And I found that by working about 6 weeks in a year, I could meet all the expenses of living. The whole of my winters, as well most of my summers, I had free and clear for study. And that last part is why he did it. He didn't want to have, he wanted to have conservation of thought. I talked about this a few days ago. Conservation of thought is, I don't have to spend all my time maintaining the house, the car, the motorcycle, blah blah blah, everything in the world. I just have what I need to take care of. Because if you only have to take care of what's necessary in life, it's pretty easy. It's pretty fast. Okay, I do it all the time. I barely spend any time on taking care of my necessities. They're easy to maintain. But then I'm free to think. And if I'm free to think, I'm also free to become a better person. Henry David Thoreau. I will read that quote again just for, it's in the thing and I separated it with the, I mean, okay, and he only was on Walden Pond for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. He left on July 4th, 1845. But for more than 5 years, he says, not just 2 years, for I maintained myself solely by the labor of my hands. And he went to Harvard, and this is kind of a rub, right? He went to Harvard, and there may have only been like 250 students at the time, but to go work by the labor of your hands is the opposite of what the upper class wants to do. They don't want to spend time with normal people. But he basically, again, I'm using that word, he continues to live by the labor of his hands. And I found that by working about 6 weeks in a year, 6 weeks, only 6 weeks. If you look at me, I only work about 2 hours a day, and I've done it for 25 years. So I'm like living proof that this is possible. Because if you're only working for necessities, it's really easy to survive. But by working 6 weeks in a year, I can meet all the expenses of living. And that's the economy chapter. The expenses of living is the economy. And at the end of that chapter, he breaks everything down to all his expenses for a year or something. But the whole of my winters, and well as most of my summers, I had free and clear for study. Free and clear. Wouldn't you like to be free? What makes you unfree in this world is all the things that you buy. Your car, your house, these things that you think are necessities that are not. In my opinion, you should always separate your wants from your needs. And if you're praying, for sure, separate your wants from your desires, right? I mean, desires and wants and things like that are not the way of God, in my opinion. But I'm going to say if the good gods exist, but the good gods want you to be G-O-D, good orderly design. I lived this out. I wrote a book, The Hobo Way, Life as an Experiment. At age 15, I read Economy. And it rang through, and I'm now 65 plus, so, I don't know, 40, 50 years. I've been subconsciously this thought was planted in my subconscious, and now I'm living it out. Now I'm actually taking it, though, from my subconscious into reality. And that's why I live in an alternate reality, because my reality is Henry David Thoreau. His chapter on economy, that you only need to work 5 years, 5 months a year to survive. And all you really need in life to be happy is necessities. But I truly didn't care much about nature at the time because I was living in a farm area and I worked on a farm and I lived in nature, right? I was working, spending my whole time working. I was working by the labor of my hands right then. And maybe Henry David Thoreau, his father was a pencil maker and he invented some things for the pencil. He's a pretty innovative guy. And I don't think he really had a rough life from a money point of view. But I lived in the book screamed at me at the rich. And to me, coming from a family where my mother and father both worked in factory, there's a built-in me and you separation, the good guys and the bad guys. What's that book where the scientific thing where you have the people living underneath the ground and the have-nots and the nots? Okay, the have-nots, there's people that have it and people that don't. And the people that don't have it are always jealous of the people that have it. It's just human nature. But I came from, like a union family, right? And they always considered anybody that was doctor, lawyer, whatever, somebody special that they're supposed to listen to. Little do they know that their son, has very little respect and never had any respect for anybody that couldn't prove that they were intelligent. Not just because you're a doctor. If I wanted to be a doctor, I'd be a doctor. If I wanted to be a lawyer, I'd be a lawyer. I never wanted to be. I was a philosophy major and a psychology minor and an English minor. There's a necessities equation here. Your necessities cost X amount of money. You take in this much money, and what's left over is joy. Okay, so the secret to joy in Henry David Thoreau mind is solitude, and his peace of mind and his contentness is because he studied and he made himself love himself by studying and learning and becoming an intelligent person. And intelligence can open any door. But he, again, focused on experience versus knowledge. He often talks all about his experience, okay? And what have I done for 25 years? I've experienced the whole planet. I am so grateful to the good gods. A quote. Here's a quote. The cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life, which is required to be exchanged for it. How much of my life is required to exchange? So something cost in accordance to what I will call life, which is required to be exchanged for it. So how much of my life will I give up to have a car? People don't realize it, but they work for a year of their life to have that car. People come down to Lake Athlon and they don't realize that a local here, they may have to work 3 years, 4 years to pay for that motorcycle. It's not easy. What is required to be exchanged for it immediately or in the long run? Henry David Thoreau. Here's another quote, which is the one that's very quoted and really rang true with me when I was... My mother and father had 5 children, so they were kind of, behind the 8 ball. They never had quite enough money they weren't poor, but they wanted to have the good life. And so they put hardwood floors in, they remodeled the house. Dad liked to buy a new car, but it all seemed pretty desperate to me. But this is a quote by Henry. Why should we be in such desperate haste to succeed in such desperate enterprises? If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it is because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured and far away. If a man does not keep pace, that means if they don't do the same as you, okay? If they don't work. I made a video the other day about work. Let them step to the music. Don't be macho and try to make them live your life. Everybody wants everybody to live their same life. They want validation that their life is okay by you doing the same as them. That's what a culture does. But if a man does not keep pace with his companion, it's because he hears a different drummer. Somebody's singing to him, the call of the wild. Okay? Let him step to the music. Let him dance. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured and far away. This is saying, what will you give to society? So this whole experiment is about what he would and would not give to society. What economy, what he would exchange of his life to have what they had. So he exchanged 5 weeks of work, or was it 6 weeks? I get these all mixed up. In exchange for able to be free enough to write a book. But what will you give to society? What will you give to your tribe? I will give to my tribe of 1 exactly what Andy wants to give to his tribe of 1. I want people to talk to me as a friend I don't want anonymous people to talk to me. I don't want people that don't have manners and can't walk up and shake my hand. I think these are the minimum graces that are required to be in my life as my tribe. He lives only by necessities. He has a real simplify. Why work for work's sake? if everybody's working and everybody's doing it, doesn't mean you have to go do it. All the geese may be flying the wrong way. That's kind of a philosophical argument. But I have 58 pages. No, I have 58 quotes that I collected, and they're in this thing. There's a link to a Google Docs that shows you uh, a compilation of 58 quotes. I only did half the chapter. I got pretty bored. I'm going to read you now a few of the quotes about his anger at society. That's why he did the experiment, to prove that he could go and follow his drummer, right? He could step to a different song, right? For more than 5 years, I'm going to read this same thing again. For more than 5 years, I maintained myself solely by the labor of my hands. And I found that by working about 6 weeks a year, I could meet all the expenses of life. The whole of my winters, as well as most of my summers, I had free and clear for study. And July 4th, he went there to claim his independence from society, in my opinion, okay? There's always many angles to things. It's like reading the Bible. A parable, everybody's going to read a different story. And that's the way a good novel is written, so that everybody can read a different story. Here's another quote from Economy. I, on my side, require of every writer, first or last, a simple and sincere account of his life, his own life, and not merely what he has heard of other men's life. And you see this right now on Twitter or Facebook. Everybody's trying to take, Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, and they jump on him and they take his things and try to claim that they're intelligent because they found some quotes by Elon Musk. He requires a writer to write about what is true of their life. The inhabitants have the inhabitants of the city, the village, have appeared to me to be doing penance in 1,000 remarkable ways. It's a really cynical thing. They're doing penance because they work, they work behind the oxen pulling a plow. And it's like they never ending. It's like middle class guilt on steroids. And people, the Protestant work ethic is about feeling guilty if you don't work. Do you feel guilty when you don't work? That's what he's talking about. Even these conscious forms of penance are hardly more incredible and astonishing than the scenes which I daily witness. The 12 labors of Hercules were trifling in comparison with those which my neighbors have undertaken. He watches these guys work, 12, 15 hours a day. This is a farm community, right? This is 1845. I think it's before the Civil War. And everybody was mostly agrarian society, right? So people got up in the morning and worked. They didn't have this 40-hour work week. It's just the start of the Industrial Revolution. The next quote, I see young men, my townsmen, whose misfortune it is to have inherited a farm. This is a good one. I like this. I see young men, my townsmen, whose misfortune it is to have inherited a farm. Houses, barns, cattle, and farming tools, for these are more easily acquired than got rid of. When you get a car, when you get a house, when you get a motorcycle, the more things you have, the harder it is to be free. Why am I free to travel the world for 25 years? And this is why the book. It's about me explaining that if you only have to pay for necessity, it only takes about $500 to $1,000 a month to travel the world. Now, there is a thing that people don't see. It's like if I want to go to Germany, I save money in Guatemala or Togo or Thailand, and I spend a little more in the overdeveloped countries. And I call them the 25 overdeveloped countries, like Western Europe and Canada, United States, and Australia. They're not normal. The pay in Cameroon is $2,500 a month. The pay in Guatemala is probably about $7,000 a year. Well, I'm wrong. $2,500 a year in Cameroon. In Togo, West Africa, $2,500 a year. In Guatemala, I believe it's 7,000 a year the average person gets. Now, you got these really rich people, maybe they're averaging it. It's all a bunch of hokey crap. They don't even have addresses on their houses. Do you think they really know how much money a person owns? Hardly anybody pays taxes. This is a cash society. Okay, number 5 quote is, who made them serfs of the soil? A serf is a person that worked for a king. And so he's saying the soil, the land, made them into a serf. A serf worked for the king, and in exchange for protection, he gave all his goods and money and taxes to the king. And so it's like a form of indentured servant. Why should they begin digging their graves as soon as they are born? And that's what people do. I've always enjoyed what I've done. All the work I've ever done in my life, except for about 1 year of working, 1/2 year when I was 18, still in high school, working for metal spinners. And that was a pretty miserable place as a factory. But it was a good thing because it taught me to find my own way. So I've been self-employed most of the last 45 years. The equation of Thoreau, work for the necessities only. Then you have time for study. That is the essence of chapter. That is the experiment. He proved that you can work for necessity. And I have proved it by 25 years only needing the necessities, or acquiring the necessities, what I can carry in my backpack. Not only that, I can have a life less normal. I could travel the world. And you can too. Do you really want that house and car and whatever? Or would you rather have the experience of life? But trust me saying I've been to 114 countries has almost zero value to a girl I meet. Zero. It's no social currency at all. Saying that I've traveled and went around the world 25 times, zero value. They want the house, the car, and the motorcycle. But people are in desperate haste. Why are we in desperate haste to succeed in such desperate enterprise? Why do we have to have our children go to university so that they can look more richer than your neighbors? That's what it's all about. It's social currency. Step to a different music. Listen to a different drummer. That's what he's saying. But July 4th, Declaration of Independence. And then he spent 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days. This is not by accident that he made the chapter Economy the first chapter. And it's not by accident he went there on the 4th of July. Okay, I want to thank you. I thank you. Life is Good and Andy Lee Graham. Click on subscribe. I'm always supposed to tell you guys that. And I have about 58 other quotes where he pretty much says society sucks, and everybody pulls out the positive quotes, but it's an overwhelming amount of quotes in here where he's basically saying that the mass majority of you are going the wrong way. And it's amazing to me that people don't see that he's sings an insult. Okay, I'm Andy Lee Graham. I've traveled nonstop for 25 years. I've lived abroad. I have no home for 25 years and almost, 9 months right now. In March of 2024, it'll be 26 years. I have the greatest of life. I live the dream. And so can you. I've been to 114 countries. I speak French, Spanish, and I've lived by my website. People think it's a failure, but I lived from my website for 23 years and 10 months. And now I'm living by the goodwill of people that feel that I give them something of value in exchange for my life, right? Okay, thank you very much. I'm Andy Lee Graham. I'm proud of who I am. And if you want to be my friend, you have to come to me, shake my hand, look me in the eye, say hello to everybody around you, and smile. And say your name is Andy Lee Graham. You say your name, shake my hand, and do it the right way. If you want to hide from the world, hide from me. If you want to be anonymous, please hide from me. Okay. But I go live in a lot of ways, and I go do things so that I can find friends that I can trust. But if you don't come to me with a real name, I don't know how I can ever trust you. It's like building your house on the sand, right? It's going to wash away. Okay, hasta luego. La vida es bien.